Welcome to The Essential Element, the Elements of Education podcast. My name is Christian Page. I'm excited to be the host for you today. Thank you for choosing to be here. You could have been anywhere else in the world, but you're choosing to spend your time with us, which lets me know that you care about education in the same way that we do. Today, we had a conversation with my friend, Carrie. Carrie wears a lot of hats in the SAMI community, but Carrie is the first face and the first voice that people hear when they walk in the door here at SAMI. We had a great conversation about how she holds students, how she takes care of them, about ways in which she tries to push them forward, but also gives them enough grace when they find themselves in a position where they're not satisfied with where they currently are. So without further ado, here's our conversation with Carrie.
Our school, we really believe in relationships, and that is emphasized through mentor group. And so I wholeheartedly believe in that.
What do they need? I have to be able to answer that question.
Yeah.
And that takes a little bit of time. The biggest teacher, I think, is failure. The brain works in failure. And those failures are actually synapses rewiring themselves in your brain.
And think about where you want to be. Because when you find your place, you find your people. And our purpose is attached to people.
You know, when there's a phenomenal teacher, when there's a phenomenal educator, when there's a phenomenal mentor, one of the mistakes that we make is we make it look too easy. Like, everyone sees the shining moment on stage. No one sees, right, like the hard time spent.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Carrie.
Yes.
Excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And your sweater, right? We had this conversation beforehand.
Yes.
Your sweater rotation, your sweater today is on point. So thank you
This is my sweater today. It'll be a different one tomorrow.
I thank you for joining us. And for folks who maybe have not had the pleasure of meeting you, for folks who may not know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you landed here at SAMI?
Yes.
What's the story of you?
Yes, it's kind of a funny story, kind of a destiny story of sorts. I'll take it way back. I am actually from Dallas, Texas. I went to school. I did my undergrad out in Texas. And then almost right after graduating from school out there, I moved up to Seattle, Washington, where I was working at a private school for 5 years. I was a nanny for 2 years and then worked at a private school for 5 years there. And then my husband and I decided to move to Tacoma. He grew up here. He graduated from SOTA, School of the Arts. And we just felt like we were meant to be in Tacoma, so we moved here. And I was looking for a job somewhere in the nonprofit world because I had already had some experience with that. And went for a drive in Point Defiance Park with my husband and a friend. And we drove by SAMI. And my husband was telling me a little bit about the school, how it was the sister school to the school where he graduated from, and kind of what the pedagogy was and what it looked like for him. And I thought, well, if they had a job opening, I might apply to there. I had never really thought about working in a high school. And 2 weeks later, this job that I'm now in became available, and I applied and I got the job. And it was one of the best moves I've ever made. I love working in high school. I love SAMI so much. I love working in the park. So it worked out really well.
Awesome. So you recently have gotten your master's degree.
Yes.
But I want to take us back for a second, right? Because, you know, like, if you have a series of skills, which you do, right? Like, you are brilliant, which you are, right? There's a series of opportunities that lay in front of you. Mm-hmm. Like, why choose young people? Why choose education, right? Why now choose high school instead of any of the other things you could be doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Why now? Why high school? I think for my personal choice is, I think that the reason why I have chosen to work with high school age students is because I feel like that's where my skill set is. And I really enjoy, I was a kindergarten teacher for 3 years and I loved that, but it takes a different energetic level, and I was good at it, but felt like there was something that was missing for me. And so when I started working with high school age students, I was like, oh, there's a lot of similarities to working with high school students and early childhood students. Not to say that they're immature, that's not what I'm saying, but it's just a different energetic level. And in some ways it's a little trickier, but I also like a challenge. And high school age students just meet me energetically, and I love how much they make me laugh. It's never boring. It is never boring to work in high school. Is it tough? Yeah. But I love their humor. I love their insight. They're very insightful. And a lot of them are really emotionally intelligent. And so it's just cool to see how high schoolers, especially in our school, are interacting with one another and with their academics. And so that's just how I just feel like it works best for me.
I'm not really one for gossip. But right, like when I talk to a lot of, I work in high schools too.
Yeah.
I work primarily with high school students.
Yes.
And one of the things that becomes a little bit of gossip in the air of people who don't work in high schools is that they're not actually, right, like intellectually intelligent or emotionally intelligent.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if there's like a specific story of when a student exhibited an amount of emotional intelligence that maybe not surprised you, right?
Yeah.
But you were like, ooh, this might be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have a million stories. I'll try to pick out one, but you're absolutely right. Anytime I tell someone that I work in a high school, they're like, wow, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, I'm not. I love it. It's great. And yeah, I think, and I think this happens with every generation, but I think older generations look at this generation right now in high school and they're like, they just don't understand type mentality. But I believe they do. And I've, like I said, I have a million stories of me witnessing them being emotionally intelligent way more than when I was in high school. I think one example that I could probably give you is at the beginning of every year at SAMI, it is a learning curve for our 9th grade students coming in to this huge park. Mm-hmm. It's huge, 710 acres. And we have classrooms all over it. So the 9th graders, they come in and they're like, I'm supposed to go to where for my next class? I have no idea where that is. No one's ever, given me explicit directions on how to get there. And I don't know anyone in that class and I don't know that teacher. It can be overwhelming. Oh. But every single year, so I guess it's not one specific example, but this is an example of something that I see is these older students, they come in and even though sometimes they're like, ooh, freshmen, they're here, they still take care of them. They're like, if they see a freshman that is just kind of like looking around, not knowing where to go, they'll grab them and say, hey, do you know where your next class is? I'm going to show you. I'll walk you there. Miss Hampton, can you call the bus? I'm going to take this student to their next class. They take so much ownership of this park. They know it like the back of their hand. And they're always willing to show an incoming 9th grader exactly where they need to go. And I think that's just one of a bunch of examples of that. But it's like, I don't know that if when I was in high school, I would have done the same thing. I mean, I hope that I would have, but I think it says something about our school too, and our framework and how our older students really take ownership. And they're like, we're going to usher in this new class and we're going to show them all the things that either we wish we had been shown or that we were shown. So yeah, I think that's just one example.
So, Carrie, take a ride with me for a quick second, right? Because I hear you saying something really interesting, and I'm interested in what your answer might be, right? So I always, whenever I work with schools, I work primarily on, trying to improve culture. And so the thing that I have to tell people, is like when we break these down, climate is the way that something feels, and culture is the reason why it feels that way. And I think for a young person, right, particularly a ninth grader, is going to have the feeling of being supported, of being mentored and all of these things, right? But like there's like a cultural element of like seniors feeling autonomous, right? Feeling like they can call the bus driver. What's in the water here at SAMI or maybe at the sister schools? Like what's the cultural element that allows students to feel that kind of autonomy?
I think the biggest element is our mentor groups, period. Like, I think that is where that ownership comes from. And I've seen this with how they talk to the underclassmen too. And it's usually the ones in their mentor group. They're like, oh, that's my mentee. Like that's how much ownership the seniors take of their mentor group and the younger students that are in it. They're like, those are my children. I have to take care of them. I have to show them. And I saw this when I worked in a mixed age kindergarten. So I had anywhere from a 3-year-old to a 6-year-old in my kindergarten. And it's kind of the same model. The 6-year-olds kind of like rose up and they would take care of the younger kids. And that's what I see in our mentor group framework too. The seniors who are just like at the height of their education, they've gone through K through 12 and they're ready to be the leaders. They're ready to take ownership. And it gives them so much, I've seen it give them so much confidence. Like even if they're not a student that like speaks up very much, I've seen students that have come in their freshman year, barely talking to anyone. And then their senior year, they're leading circles in their mentor group. I don't know where else I've seen that. Yeah. So I really do feel that that's where that culture lives, is in those mentor groups for sure.
Man, that's really cool. I've been trying to explain to people, right? Like there's a quote from Dr. Soma that says, right, that culture is to humans as water is to fish. Yes. And there are some people who have started, their careers in one of the element schools. And I've been trying to explain to them often, like, no, this isn't normal, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen everywhere.
Yeah.
And so I thank you for shedding light on that, right? I think it's important to know how much the mentor groups actually impact students.
Absolutely.
And then how that, like, what's the fruit of that? Like, how does that show up in behavior? So thank you. Thank you for shedding light on that. I'm really curious, right? So you've just recently gotten your master's degree in preventative mental health.
Yes, school counseling and preventative mental health.
Yeah, right. And I don't think that, and this is just me, this is my bias. This is where I turn into a bit of a gossip. I don't think people just go back to school just to go back to school, like because it sounds like fun. You signed up for reading homework.
If you had asked me even a year before I applied to graduate school, if I was going to go back to school, I would have laughed. Like I had never, I was a kid that really struggled in school and I even struggled pretty hard in my undergrad. So I just was kind of like one of those people that was like, it's going to be so hard. And it was, but it was a different kind of hard. And really my inspiration for going back to school was SAMI. The students were so inspiring and actually encouraging me to do it, which was like, you're a kid that's telling me like, go back to school. You can do this. You're already doing this in a sense. You just need to go do it. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, you guys are smart. I'm just going to do it. And I'm so glad that I did because it was such a positive experience. And I learned so much more about myself and about our students and about mental health as a whole. So I always am telling people, if you're even like thinking about it, just do it. Like just do it. It's worth it. I really enjoyed it. I'm at a phase where I'm just done with it, and so I'm like, oh, I don't think I'll ever go back to school, but never say never. Yeah. Maybe I will again.
I say you said that the first time.
No.
Yeah. I'm really curious about your specialization though, right? Like your field of study. Why choose mental health? Why choose counseling? Was there something you saw in the world, a problem you wanted to solve? Yeah,
again, my undergrad was in early childhood and special education. So I've always kind of had an interest in psychology and neuropsychology and mental health and holistic mental health. And I myself, I have ADHD. And so I've always been like really into researching more and more about it. Like as I get older and finding out why I do things the way that I do. And I think it was kind of ironic. I applied to grad school just before COVID started. Like, I think it was in the fall, and then we went into lockdown in the spring. And again, in almost the same kind of sense that I came to SAMI, this kind of like almost destiny thing, it kind of felt like that. I was kind of like, oh, I needed to be in this field to get ready for what's going to come after this. And I felt that throughout the entire program. It was like we were just starting to see mental health decline really rapidly. And I was like, oh, I need to, if I'm going to be in education, I need to be ready to hold these students. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've always known that there's a great need for more counselors in the world, just in general, in schools, out of schools. I think we saw too during the pandemic that it was hard to find a counselor. People were really struggling. So yeah, it just felt like the right time and needed. Yeah.
I am a sucker for language, mm-hmm. right? I pick up on words pretty often. I love that you use the word hold. Mm-hmm. And I'm really curious, right? Like in your practice and your work with students, mm-hmm. How do you hold students?
Yeah.
And is there a particular time where you felt like, you know, you've had to hold someone through a difficult time that you're grateful you had the tools to be able to do so?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Holding is a very like, I feel like that kind of comes from my like holistic kind of view of education, but it's in the counseling world, they call it unconditional positive regard. Mm. So no matter how a student's performing or behaving or just anything, that it's like unconditional positive regard. I've had a lot of success with that, especially with students that were showing signs of like potential like behavioral stuff, skipping class, doing drugs, stuff like that. Yeah. And just like kind of creating a space for them to come in and just feel like they don't have to be afraid to show up. And I think that comes, and sorry if I'm starting to ramble, but it's all a stream of consciousness. Yeah. I am all about shame reduction, and I've had a lot of success with, I'll have a student that, you know, maybe is assisting me for a period a day, but is maybe, you know, skipping the other classes or something. But it's like, they always are coming to help me at my desk because I'm always happy to see them. I'm not asking them, you know, hey, you know, where have you been? Like, you haven't been showing up for this. So it's just kind of like creating a safe space for them to just come in and just be. And I, again, am finding that in our mentor groups here. And that's where I have that inspiration from as well, is it's a space for them to go and just be and be held in a sense, in all different ways, and just like bonding with other students, having an adult who's always excited to see them, always going to want to help them in everything that they're doing. Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel really passionate about that aspect, the holding, the unconditional positive regard. I feel like we need more of that in schools.
Yeah, I'm loving this answer, Greg, because I'm a sucker for this culture conversation. Yeah. And I think that the mark of a great culture, right, is how we hold people when they fail.
Right.
Or when they fail to meet certain expectations or standards, or right. And like, what does it look like to get those folks back on track? I'm curious for, right, like, and your, can I ask you a spicy question, right?
Yes, I love spicy questions.
I love it, right? Because when when I was growing up, right, like the way that people responded to those things was through punitive discipline.
Right.
Right? If you don't show up to class, you're in trouble. You don't show up to class for a certain amount of days.
Right.
Right? Then we're calling your parents, right? Then there's legal implications. There's how does this idea of unconditional positive regard, right, measure up or serve students better than a punitive approach to discipline?
Yeah, just to kind of almost kind of repeat what I said, but in a different way. It's the shame reduction. It's if we're already kind of beating a student while they're already down, that cycle's just going to continue. If they're having situations from home, or just haven't found their passion, or there's all sorts of different reasons why a student might not be coming to school or might not be performing the way that we think they should be. I've just seen that it's more effective to build them up in those moments than to kind of be like, you should be doing this, this, and this. They're still kids. They're still learning how to be humans in this world. Our brains don't fully finish developing until the age of 25. So it's just kind of, what I've observed is that building them up when they're down, as opposed to being punitive, is much more effective. And that's not to say that they shouldn't be held accountable. Obviously, there's accountability that needs to be held when harm has been done. But there's a way to do that, again, with unconditional positive regard. And they're much more likely to respond to that than when it's introduced with what I feel are shameful tactics. So I like that spicy question.
Yeah.
That's good.
No, I think it's a really big topic of debate, right?
It is.
Like,
yeah.
Which direction do we go? How would students aren't taking personal accountability for their actions? And I love that, right? Like your approach covers both.
Yeah.
Right? Like
accountability is important. You can't just have the building up part. It's like, we're going to do this part and you're going to do this part. And it's teamwork and we're doing it together. Yeah.
Oh, can I switch gears on you for a second?
Yes, you can.
Because I'm so fascinated by like all the hats that you wear while you're here. Right? Because there is an element of mentorship, there's an element of counseling, but you're also like the first face.
Yes.
Or the first voice.
Yes.
That people hear when they walk in the front door at SAMI.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, like, on the way to, right, like positive reinforcement or anything, like, how does that feel? What does that feel like? What are you trying to impart on students as they're entering the building?
It's my goal to be, again, it's a part of my personality, but it's a part of like how I view education too. It's like, I don't know where these students are coming from, what kind of home they're coming from in the morning. And so when they get here, whether it be on time or late, I'm like, hey, so glad you're here. Like, I just want them to like feel welcomed immediately. And so, some days harder than others. Some days I'm really tired and maybe I don't, I'm not like as energetic, but I still make a point to look at them when they come in and I'm like, where are you headed this morning? Okay, do you need me to call you a bus? Okay, go ahead and head that way. Like I'm wanting them to feel seen. I think that's another really important aspect. And I feel like we're really lucky in having a smaller school where we can be super intentional about that. I think it's hard to do that at the bigger schools because sometimes kids can just kind of get lost in the shuffle in the crowd. But I'm glad that we have a little bit of a smaller situation where I can like be really intentional. By the time students are seniors, I know like a lot about them. Like it was tough during quarantine and lockdown, but typically by the time students are seniors, it's like I know almost every single senior's first and last name. And they're sometimes surprised by that. But I'm like, I I notice, like I'm taking notice of you guys. I look at your names all day, every day. I create the student schedules. I do attendance. And so it's like my work is very student centered, looking at their data all the time. So yeah, to answer your question, being the first person that they interact with typically, I try to be as welcoming and make sure that they know that I've seen them come in the morning and that they're not just another number, which I think it can feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, I think so, especially in high school, right?
Yeah.
I think that, especially if you go to a larger school, those things end up happening.
I know.
I think one of the beautiful things about SAMI and the element schools are just my observational data, right? I can't support this with quantitative or qualitative, but right, is that teachers end up caring about students past the point of graduation, right? It's
Yes.
not a factory model. It's not, we just got to get you here. It's
Right.
not about graduation rates. Like you said, I know everybody by first and last name.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that if they were to walk through the door 5 years later, that it wouldn't be like, what's your name again? Right? And I think the conversation with your husband is fruit of that, right? So this is almost generational for you all. I'm curious, right? Like what, as you've seen this relationship with your husband and the element schools, and as you work in this space, like what are your hopes for students after graduation?
My hopes for students after graduation is that in our educational system, it's like the goal is for them to have this plan where they're gonna get a job right away, they're gonna go to college right away, they know exactly what they want to do. And while that would be cool, it's not totally realistic because some people don't know what they want to do until they're 30 years old. So what I think our schools do really well is, yes, help them explore those things, but really what it is giving them the confidence that they can graduate from high school and feel confident in being like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to figure it out. And so I think it's that confidence building structure, again, through the mentor groups, just feeling like they know the system, they know how things work. We're giving them the information, we're giving them the tools, we're telling them how to use them and helping them get practice in using them. So like our internship program is amazing and they're getting that real world experience, trying out those pathways, seeing if they work, seeing if they don't. Sometimes they don't. And just giving them confidence that after high school, I may not know exactly what I'm going to do, but I have the confidence and I was held enough in high school that I know I can figure it out.
So you've been here for 5 years now, right?
This is my fifth school year. So yeah, like 4.5 years total, but yeah.
So your first class of seniors are now either seniors in college or graduating or somewhere in the workforce in a career.
Yeah.
And your first group of freshmen have now gone through graduation.
Right.
Is there a particular story where you've seen what you've named, that confidence, that instilling?
Absolutely.
In a particular students where that's panned out?
Yes. Yes. Again, I have lots of stories, but we've had the class that just graduated last year. Those were my freshmen, my first year. And it's such a powerful experience to see the 4-year cycle and see how students change and grow and get ready to go into adult life. It was like almost surreal and really cool. But there were a few students in that class that their first year of high school, it was like they did not have a lot of support outside of school. Really struggled in school, maybe were not coming to school very often, and just really struggling, but then got to their senior year and just absolutely flourished and graduated and very gainfully employed and doing really well. And we do, especially the mentors, like keep up with students after they graduate. And I love it when they come back to like either visit or get their transcript or their diploma if they hadn't got it. It's always like this like fun little reunion. It's like, yay, tell me what you're up to. And it just seems to me that when I do get to find out what they're up to, it's like they are so excited to tell me. They're like, I've done this and this, and I thought I was going to do this, but that didn't work out. And so I tried this instead, and I love what I'm doing. And it's those stories that kind of like every educator keeps us going. Because we're like, it's for something. Can be kind of like a long haul sometimes, but to get to see the fruits of it afterwards and see how happy they are and making money and in healthy relationships, it's like, oh, yay, okay. That's why we do this. Yeah.
Man, that's awesome to be able to see the fruit of all of the intentions come around full circle.
Yeah.
I have a bit of I don't know if I want to call it philosophical. Maybe it's more psychology-based question.
Go for it.
I want to close on this, right? Because I think that this is a great way for us to bring this in, because like not everybody's going to get to experience you in person. But experiencing is really genuine, right? Is like caring for these young people as humans, right? Not just, like you said, like as a number.
Right.
I want them to feel seen. I want them to feel heard. But I know that like, if we work backwards, right, our results are determined by our consistent behavior.
Right.
And our consistent behavior is determined by a series of beliefs.
Yeah.
Right? You could go through any of the psychology, right? The ladder of inference or the iceberg model, or, right? We can go through any of those things. And ultimately what it comes down to is the way that we behave and the results that we get are often determined by the beliefs that we hold about the people who we're in community with.
Yeah.
And so what maybe are 2 or 3 beliefs that you think every educator should hold about the population of students whom they're serving?
Sure. First one that comes to mind is there is always a reason. There's always a reason that a student is acting a certain way or not performing in the way that we think they should. There's always, I don't believe that students don't care. I believe they all care. Their care just looks different per student. And there's always something that is the reason that maybe they're acting a certain way. And I think if we want them to be successful, like we help them figure that out. So that's probably my first one. My second one is this is my Southern
Come on, I'm
phrase.
here for it.
You're always going to catch more flies with honey. And that just goes back to the unconditional positive regard. You're going to have more student buy-in if they feel safe with you, if they feel like they can come to you and tell you things, if they feel like you're not going to shame them for this, that, or the other. They're going to be more engaged. They're going to work harder for you if they feel comfortable and safe with you. Yeah.
Can I ask you the spicy end of this?
Yes.
Because I got really excited about your last answer. What's one belief that's widely held by educators that you think does not serve us? Nobody at SAMI, right? Nobody at the element schools.
No. Because I have a spicy answer.
I like it.
So
Come
I'm trying
on.
to figure out how to phrase it.
Exactly as it's going in your head.
I don't believe that grace is coddling.
Tell me more.
I think we saw this during the pandemic. school districts were, concerned about students and implementing some things like, you can't fail a student. I think there was one semester it was like, you can't give any students E's or F's. And I think that irked a lot of educators. And to me, it made total sense. I'm like, this is unprecedented, really awful stuff the collective is going through, and everyone, especially the kids, need grace. And so, but I think that is seen as we're not holding them accountable, or we're coddling them and implementing stuff like that. So, but I don't believe that. I believe we're teaching kids grace and empathy through measures like that. And the idea is that they will give those same things to others in their adult life. That's the hope. So yeah, kind of spicy, but
Yeah.
that's what I think.
No, I dig it, right? And watching this come full circle of like your first story of saying how seniors have met freshmen with grace.
Yeah.
Right? I think that they would have had to seen it be modeled somewhere.
Right.
In order to be able to exhibit it.
Exactly.
So I love that. Man, Carrie, I've had a lot of fun.
Thanks, me too.
Having a conversation
I love
with
talking
you.
about SAMI, so.
Yeah, it's a great place, right?
It is.
And part of that is you, right? So thank you for all that you do here. Thank you for taking the time to have a conversation with us.
Of course.
Really appreciate you for the things that you pour into the SAMI community, and grateful that we got the opportunity to talk today.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure.
Elements of Education is a 501c3 nonprofit organization in Tacoma, Washington, dedicated to changing public education to better serve the specific and diverse needs of students in our public schools. For more information about how you can support the work that we do, please visit elementsofed.org, or you can find us on Instagram at Elements of Education, or on our website,